Hello everyone, this is Greyshot117,
And Greyshot151 here.
and today we're going over the Americas in terms of Victoria 3, a tier list. Because there's so many nations in this game, we're going to keep it small, tight, and a nice coordinated list with
Yeah, if we
two.
tried to do the whole world, we would be here for hours. So we're just going to do Americas and maybe keep this to a 20-minute video, to be honest.
Yes. And to be fair, I've played it quite a bit and failed a lot. He's played a lot and actually won at this game. So he knows a lot more what he's talking about than I am, but I
That
also
doesn't
try
mean
to.
I know everything, but I will give it my best shot. But yeah, we're basically going over the most interesting slash like a tier list of all the countries in the Americas, except for unrecognized powers, because you can't play them, so what do you know? Also, I forgot the Indian territory, might be. But if they were
It,
on here, they would be, I don't know, maybe like a C-ish or something, maybe a D, I don't know. Uh,
the reason we would even see that, even though they're a puppet, is because technically they have better stats than in some cases than Texas, which I find a
yeah,
little bit funny.
better stats. The main problem with them is they just don't have the population or the resources compared to Texas. I mean, not that the population of Texas is anything to be great at, but like at least they can expand and take over more rich nations or rich areas of territory. But
Yep.
we're diving ahead. We're going to go in alphabetical order. And first off, we're going to go with the nation of Argentina.
Yep. This nation is you can easily expand in. Has a lot of bonuses because unlike a lot of other South American nations, it doesn't have the infrastructure negatives from the rainforest and mountains that
Yep.
affect a lot of other states. Again, expansion is fantastic, and most importantly, you could technically strike your arch rival while they're still weak. 151. Care to explain?
Yeah, so Brazil starts off the war in a bitterly divided. They're divided in the north, they're divided in the south, and while they are in a weakened state, any nation can pretty much declare war on them in the early game and just wipe the floor with them. However, America and Great Britain have a higher chance than not to interfere. Now, again, if you're able to go in very quickly, maybe you can grab some territory, but we have to weigh this against when you're in like a multiplayer session because you don't want to ruin the game, right? Like if you're constantly restarting you're getting Great Britain, like you're getting just rolling bad and Great Britain's like jumping on their side, that's a negative. And that is
Yeah.
one negative for Argentina. In this respect, in most South American countries, is you can't declare as war as easily because you got two people looking over your back, maybe a third with France or whatnot. So, you know, keep that in mind. But the other major negative I will say is that the population isn't quite as awesome as like other nations.
Yep.
Yes, you are more developed, but the population just isn't there. And while migration can make it slacked later, early game, that lack of population is really going to make you suffer. Unless you conquer, which again, we may note is difficult. So,
Yep.
with all that said, and the fact that they are in a great resource spot, that you have sulfur, iron, coal, basically all the best stuff, I really would put this as like a low A, right? Like
Okay.
you have all the basic resources. The major issue is just that population and the fact that war is difficult. But again, you have some awesome abilities like you can colonize to the south, which is awesome. You know, you do have a few ways to expand. It's not just building simulator, right?
Yeah.
Or Hoy South America. Hoy South America is just terrible.
Also, typically Brazil will ally more Venezuela. I don't typically see them ally like Bolivia and Peru. That's through my playthroughs. Maybe it's different in yours, but you could theoretically try to strike at other neighbors around you. Maybe even Paraguay. Brazil doesn't care too much for Paraguay. But you could strike them and try to absorb them to get big enough to fight Brazil. But again, I think low A for right now is the solid choice. Okay. What about Russia? Are we counting Russia?
No, we don't. Wait, Russia's here?
Again, Russia's in Alaska.
Alaska. No, we don't. We're not going to count them. We'll count them in like the major areas, right? Like Russia, Russia's got Alaska, but that doesn't count. Let's be honest.
It counts. It is on their thing that they can look up. I mean, on their territorial map. And Alaska has a lot of fish. No gold though. Unfortunately, no gold for Russia. Maybe in the future, but
Yeah.
Brazil. Explain.
All right. So, obviously, as Brazil, you are in a fantastic position for the South American continent. Even though you're at war, it is a war that can be won. I don't say relatively easily, but it's a war that can be won with if you know what you're doing. The other benefit is your population. You are the big fish in this continent. You have the highest population. You have most resources. Even though you are lacking a few fundamentals, you still have a surplus when it comes to agricultural resources. So something like sulfur, right? You might have to conquer a neighbor just if you want adequate sources or do a massive amount of trade. But it isn't the biggest hit to your economy. You make it up in population, the abundance of resources. Like as we mentioned with South American countries, usually your policies or politics are in a good, if not, good spot compared to a lot of the world. So you can easily maneuver to a, more multicultural state, until they patch it and they can make, like more conservative governments more viable. But as of right now, multiculturalism is not the hardest thing to do when you're developing from Brazil. So overall, if you pick Brazil, you basically good conquering abilities, good expansion abilities, good resource base, good population base. There's not a lot bad to say, minus maybe some modifiers if you were to go to like the Amazonas. But like mostly if you just stick by the coast, you're fine.
Yep. And again, once you conquer that territory from the in that initial war, so long as you get through that, you're pretty much golden to just expand. You might have to have an issue with Paraguay, yep. But because of your economy, because of how much population you have in territory that you can build up at a rather decent pace, and again, you can kind of build up your army, navy, etc. So you're in a solid state to fight other powers, right? So if a world leader does come in, you could technically fund your education, get that up, boost up your overall what's it called? Your standard of living, right? To get more people in school and everything like that. To where, again, I've rushed ironclads and navies and stuff like that, and you can actually make a decent navy, which is more, it's funny, coming from Brazil, who made the first dreadnoughts, or one of the first. But I would say A tier. What about you?
Yeah, I would agree. Top of A. It's definitely, I think Argentina's got the better resources in regards to its mining base, but agriculturally, Brazil takes it away, and its population is nothing to sneeze at. And you don't have to worry about malices or anything either. So yeah, easy A. Easy A. If not, I would put it at S tier. I would consider S tier if it was a bit more. It's on the edge of S, I would say. The only factor for me is kind of, you're the big fish in the small pond, and for me, that's less interesting. I like nations that you can fight to the top, than just being at the top. But I can't just denounce it as being bad. It's
no. And to be fair, in the game itself, it does list you as a minor power, right? Even though, again, it's very quickly and easily able to shoot up to major power, and if you play your cards right, you could become a great power.
Yeah, it's like the Persia of South America in that respect.
Yes. The escalation factor is something to keep in mind. So, even the Corgi agrees. All right, so next up we have Central America. 151, why don't you explain why Central America is not like A tier? Because again, you have a good starting GDP and a 1.6 million population. You're in a great spot to expand, right? Right?
No, you're surrounded. The problem with Central America is you're the nation that everyone eats. New Granada to the south is usually an easy way to expand northward. Mexico can expand southward. It's really a case of you're surrounded by larger powers. You don't have the best resources. Your population is better than Argentina, I'll give you that. But like your resource base is kind of poor for industrialization. So there's nothing really to do in your case, minus like conquering the little kingdom attached to you.
And that's protected by Great Britain.
Yeah, so you're really kind of waiting to die because I most times this nation splits up, and I understand why. Yeah. Right? Like it's just easy pickings for someone to come in, split the nation, then gobble it up like single file. So because of its poor resource base, its poor positioning, I would probably give it a D. It's a nation no one's gonna pick arbitrarily like off the bat. That's fair. There are plenty of reasons against it. The only upside is the population and the politics. Those are the only two things that are good. But that's not enough to save it in this region.
Yeah. Again, I agree with you 100% D tier. It is something that's going to be hard to expand and everything else. So, and infrastructure it has every single state has the infrastructure and state construction debuff. So,
Which
yeah,
is
no.
really, really like crippling when you don't have like railways and such,
Yeah.
and you have to constantly keep updating your infrastructure for a nation that like desperately needs anything like that desperately needs to develop. It can't be focused just on developing infrastructure. Ugh.
Exactly. All right, 151, I brought Chile up. Explain why Chile is good or bad.
Well, Chile is great as a meal, but as a country in Victoria 3, not so much. I mean, it's like I would say it's a meh, because all of your provinces, or at least all the ones with high population, have negative malices for construction and infrastructure, because you are in the mountains. And the other main issue that you're going to face in this game. Oh, hold on. I'm probably glowing again.
Yeah.
Let me fix that. Okay. Okay. So let me take that from the top.
Okay.
Yeah, so Chile is good as a meal, bad as a nation in Victoria 3. Maybe not bad. It's just kind of average because you're really going to suffer from the mountain penalty, but you have good population. But you're going to have a low GDP to start, so your construction is going to be slow. But on the flip side, you have plenty of resources to work off of. Downside is, though, it's hard to expand because you have powerful neighbors to your right with Argentina and to your north with Peru and Bolivia, who usually join. Uh, so I would say that it's a case of they're not bad, but there's nothing to really make you want to choose them like right off the bat. Like
Okay.
you can't form any cool nations. You like you can historically expand northward, but like cool. You know what I mean? Like if America or Great Britain intervene, you're screwed. So I would give it a solid C. There's some great things about it, like you can be resource independent and like for a lot like your base industrial resources, you're in a great spot. You have a good population, but your construction's gonna suck, which means you're just gonna be sitting there waiting for stuff to build or building your railways, which is not fun.
This is when you're like, all right, if I can't go into South America, time to go to Easter Island in Tahiti. What we're naval invasions out there. Naval invasion 1836. What could go wrong? No.
Yeah.
But seriously, agree. Construction issues, stuff like that, just kind of bring it down from really expanding as much as it could. So yes, I would say C tier is probably a good spot for it.
All
Same for
right,
Chile.
next up is the nation of Cuba. Do you have any thoughts on this 117?
It's a Spanish puppet. That's my biggest issue is the fact you're tied to the Spanish.
You're tied to you're tied to the Spanish market. You're tied to the crown. So really, it's just feeding that market. You're also in a deficit the moment you start, if I recall correctly. Most nations don't, but I remember starting Cuba because I was like, oh, well, it should be fun, and like realizing, oh no, this is just horrible. So yeah, that's not the most compelling thing to start off as.
Okay. Yeah, and again, it's one of those situations where, again, kind of just because you're a puppet, you can try to fight for your independence. I mean, you do have a decent economy, so you could theoretically try to use diplomacy to try to get another nation to help you out with your independence. But
your population isn't terrible. The resources that you have, like you can turn into like a sugar plantation
yeah,
really easily, and you can like develop a whole bunch of money that way. The major problem is that it's hard to industrialize that freaking island. It's hard to expand off that island because you need to have a navy. So it's not like you can just go over and say, "Hey, Haiti, I can conk you over." Um, and also you're surrounded by more major powers. So yes, you can make this nation great if you kind of cheese it, but it's just trying to build like a natural all-rounded economy is just not going to work with Cuba.
yeah. I do think the literacy is at 31%, and again, it doesn't have a debuff with its country, right? So you could
No,
build
absolutely.
up.
Yeah, absolutely in that respect. I just think it's like you're in a tough situation, and while you can cheese your way to the top, as many people like I've seen many videos with saying like the greatest sugar export in the world, most of the times I'm trying to play the game like I'm building an all-round economy, and you just can't do that with Cuba. You really just have to exploit the hell out of
Out of
like
sugar.
selling out of sugar and other resources. And that's really your main game plan. And if you can only do that, and you're just building in a like, there's no rooms for expansion or anything of that nature. I would value it a little bit lower. I'd say maybe like top of D.
I would say C tier. What do you think's better, Chile or Cuba?
Oh, Chile, easily.
Okay, no, all right, no, we'll put it like there. All right, so next up on the list, because I really don't have too much to say on that one. Since
Haiti.
we're skipping a lot. Haiti. Explain Haiti 151.
Poor resource area. You're kind of a shittier version of Cuba in that respect. Well, yes, you have the island to yourself, and yes, you don't really have to worry about naval invasions as much from like major powers, unless they really strong arm you. Yeah, I don't really have anything positive to say. Their population isn't even grand, like compared to Cuba. What
Doesn't
is it?
have a huge debuff on its country.
Yeah,
That
but saying it doesn't have a debuff isn't like glowing reviews,
No,
right?
it's not. But compared to some nations in the Americas, that's decent. I agree. It's in a tough spot. I mean,
Your
it has
GDP
some.
is your GDP is a core is like a 1/3 of a million, and
Yeah,
while yeah, your population isn't terrible at like 600,000, you have no natural resources, like no iron, no coal. There is no way you're going to be able to expand in regards to the nation. So
yeah.
you're just really screwed. So in regards to playing as Haiti, it's a nation that to be conquered. In that regard, it's probably the bottom of D. Because at least for Central America, you have a lot better resources.
Yeah.
Here, not so much.
Okay, so now that I organized the bomb, I put everything in F tier so it's easier for me to pull up. We did miss a couple by accident. That was me jumping ahead. So let's talk about Bolivia before I forget again.
I think in this regard, one cannot post Bolivia without also taking into consideration Peru.
Yes.
And with that in mind, I think Bolivia suffers from the constant problem of the infrastructure and the construction efficiency but net
Yeah.
analysis that we've been mentioning. However, their resource base is actually quite strong. Their population isn't bad. It's actually pretty solid as well. Again, politics wise, they're pretty good. So that was like, there's some good trades, some ups and downs. The major thing is you form a fusion with Peru. Like you can
Yes.
fuse with Peru to make like a, I
Like a
think it's
fusion dance.
yeah, exactly. You can actually get a decent amount of resources, access to the sea. Like Bolivia, I think is like the one of the underrated nations. Like it's a little bit more work, but the payoff is actually pretty considerable. Now, in retrospect, Peru is absolute trash because you start out, you immediately join Bolivia, so you're like in a deficit. You immediately join them. You're like, there's so many negative balances you get. So I would like put like Peru, the fact that you like join and kind of have to break yourself free. It's not a nation I would recommend. So in that respect, I'd put it like the top of D. But Bolivia, on the other hand, because of the fusion that it does with Peru, because of all the good resources that you get, like gold mine, sulfur, etc., I would actually put this in like a solid B category. It has the negative balances, which are worse because most
Yeah.
of your population are in the mountains, but the upside is really strong.
You're
And
also in a good area to expand with Ecuador. Like
yes,
if once you take that over, you can push up, and there's some decent territory there.
or you can go after Chile, like they did in our own historical factors. Peru and Bolivia declared war on Chile, if I'm not mistaken, and Chile actually fought its way up the Andes Mountains and won. So you can expand southward and actually like take territory. So there is also
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Again,
Very
it's
fair.
more mountains, so it's not the greatest, but hey, population's population.
Exactly. Also, because Brazil's most likely going to be stuck in their conflict, right?
Yeah.
You could ally yourself with Argentina because typically Bolivia has good relations with Argentina and try to force
Yeah, the
Brazil.
conflict doesn't last that long though. So when you're playing as Bolivia, the war lasts like a few years tops. So like if you want to like instant declare war, sure, but it's
Yes.
for the Amazonas, which isn't like great. It's low pop.
No.
Yeah.
But my thought process is right. I'm just saying you could ally the North, the South, or Brazil.
yeah.
You're
Yeah,
kind of in a great state to get all sorts of allies. Where the only other state that really has that is Brazil itself.
I understand. Okay. Yes. Yeah. No. Gotcha. You can do a northward, southward, or there's multiple directions of expansion. Got it.
Yep.
The one nation though that we did skip, and I would make note is pretty bad in that respect, is Ecuador. Ecuador
Yes.
is a nation that is so small, you're surrounded by more powerful nations that you're just going to get gobbled up. There's no real reason to play them. Their mountain balances are going to also be a negative. So I
Yeah.
would put them next to Haiti. in regards to it's just a nation you're going to gobble up. There's no reason to choose it. There's not like you could do something crazy maybe, but like you could do something funner with on like Cuba, right? Or like something else. You don't need to pick Ecuador.
My only thing is, right, is if I'm looking at Ecuador, is they do have a decent army, right? So if you can get an ally and fund yourself, you could strike at New Granada. You have the I mean, like, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah, but there's better like if you're gonna start the game off, wouldn't you rather be New Granada eating Ecuador instead of Ecuador
No.
picking New
But
Granada?
you compare it to Haiti. I'm just saying, like, if I'm looking on this list, I would say it as a low C rather than a or even I wouldn't say it's better than Peru, but I would say it's at least better than Haiti and Central America.
I would disagree with that, but I will relent in that regard. You've played
Because Central America breaks up.
You went through in the multiplayer sessions picking Ecuador, New Granada, and all that jazz. So if my biggest problem is again you have to pay money to incorporate it. You have to like go after it's kind of there's just so many reasons against it. And there's no like cool again Victoria doesn't have like cool like local buildings or something. If Ecuador had something special, I would say yes. But there's nothing to my knowledge that makes Ecuador attractive. So that's why I would put them in D. It's just there's just far more negative than there's positive.
I'm not saying that with your standards, right? If we're keeping Peru at high D, then we move Ecuador, and I would have Ecuador be at the second. Second.
What about okay, I'll put them second D. I'll accept.
Yeah. Now again, if we actually included like the Mosquito Kingdom, or the Indian Territory,
oh yeah, those would be bottom.
Those are bottom. But at the very least, right now we have a solid D tier list, lots of Ds.
Yep. Now let's go with the triple, which are on here. So it's HBC, Lower Canada, and Upper Canada, and I think all of these basically kind of do the same thing. I mean, you're primarily gonna want to choose Upper Canada or Lower Canada as your starts, mainly so you can form Canada itself. You're gonna want you have a good resource base, a great population base. You're pretty much you can go after the U.S. if you want, but that's not like wise unless you have like the backing of Britain and such. Like if you can finagle your way into that conflict and take some territory, sure you can become more than just the hat of the U.S.
Yeah. So here's the question, right? Because to be fair, I have not played as much in Canada. With any of the three, the Hudson Bay Company, Lower Canada, Upper Canada, you can essentially combine the others, form Canada, right? And then either go after the UK. I mean, technically you can fight Russia if you want to. I mean, it's not like Russia defends.
The main problem is, again, you are under the British.
Yeah.
And you are also in a state of there's like an obvious choice, like when you're playing Europa, right? There's some nations that it's easy to form Germany, like you pick Prussia, or like the Teutonic Order, right? There are some nations you can do it as well, but it's kind of like ludicrous to do it. It's like Israel in regard when you pick one of those Aquitaine nations and you're like form France and France is there. It's like
no, I see Canada kind of like China in Hearts of Iron, where there's all sorts of different Chinese warlords that you can play as, or the Republic of China. Yeah. But out of the warlords, there's one with a huge, massive resource, stockpile, and there's another one that's nothing, just like mountains and death. So if I had to like pick, probably upper, like you said,
the Hudson Bay Company is like I would argue the worst one, lowest population, lowest GDP, lowest resources. So it's like if you want to form Canada, there's better ways to do it. So Hudson Bay, I'd say, is like your average C tier, and you could do like, I don't know.
I just noticed also, you do know there's Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, right?
Yeah, I didn't add those. Those were too small. I mean, it's like what's the point at that point? You're just good, like, no.
We have an F tier for a reason, all right?
Okay, I did that with other nations. Once we get to Africa, you're gonna be you're gonna regret you saying that. But until then, I argue Lower Canada and Upper Canada are at a higher tier because of their solid resource foundation, their solid population, and the fact that you also have good better politics in regards to being like part of the English system.
Okay, so how about B tier for them? Is that fair?
B tier? So you would argue B tier. I guess you don't have that much conquest.
Yeah, well, you can just naturally incorporate and expand, right? Kind of like how Italy does it, where you can take over the rest of Canada, form actual Canada, absorb that population, and then use it to strike
Now I'm
Russia,
imagining Italian
U.S.
Canada.
Just build up your economy, whatever you need to.
Okay, I'll go with a B under Bolivia, or definitely above Bolivia. I think it's way easier to form it than Bolivia, and you don't get the malices, so
Yeah.
above that. That makes sense.
All right.
Uh,
So the Hudson Bay Company, though, I would
C.
say,
I would put
yeah,
C. You can do it, but like, why? Like, why would you choose?
I'm putting it at the lowest C.
Okay, I'll agree to that.
All right.
Uh, next
Next
up,
up,
Mexico.
V. Viva Mexico. Honestly, Mexico is an interesting one because even though you lose the war to Texas,
Yeah,
even though
you lose the war to
most
the U.S.
likely you're gonna fight the U.S., right?
You got some also heavy malices when it comes to your politics too, because you're
Yes,
like, yeah, it's gonna take a lot. It's gonna take a while to transition. Yeah,
it's a rough start. It's a
yeah,
rough start, but if you get
but
through it,
yeah,
if you get through it, there's a lot of places to build. You have a
yep.
great population. Maybe not the best economy for said population
But you
amount,
can
but
turn
still
that economy
great.
around pretty quick.
Yes.
And you have all the basic resources you need to do that. You have sulfur, you have iron, you have coal. Everything is there. It's just the malice. You like historical precedent. Just make sure it's a negative. But in the hands of a capable player, you can blunt the U.S. actually
Yes.
without the greatest of difficulty. You can get some alliances because you are the second largest power of the Americas. Yeah, you're better than Brazil. I will say that in regards to being Mexico. And if you can hold out, you've got some great areas to expand to with like California and such. So there's some great resource and like there's some great locations you can expand to, migrate your people to, and just gradually grow. So yeah, I think this is like an easy A. This is the easiest of A's because yeah, it's a tough start,
Do
but
you?
when you get into it, yeah, you can really turn the tide.
But do you think it's better than Brazil? I would say Brazil is better because your expansion potential, right, to expand there, right,
Better
might take you a while
resources.
to incorporate. Oh, better resources?
Well, yeah, because you get sulfur. Sulfur is so important when it comes to military campaigns. Brazil, you're the biggest fish in the pond, but that's also the caveat of you can bully everyone around you because they're smaller than you. So like not having the biggest army isn't the biggest deal. But because of sulfur, you get
I
access to
Yeah.
ammunition, explosives, which means you get more resources, which means you get better guns. Yes, your GDP is crap in comparison to the United States, but most nations are good that compared to the United States, and you are the best of the best. Like, if you are able like any nation, if there's any nation that has the best chance against the U.S. and you industrialize, it's Mexico.
Okay. Um.
Yeah, you can get punished, but like if you can again get like one European nation on your side, or like develop yourself like a human, right? Like an AI you can knock over, but like a capable player, I think can actually hold out relatively well.
Okay, you convinced me.
Okay,
I just saw Brazil being a little bit easier of a start compared to the two,
it's
but I
it's kind of like Overwatch, right? There's some that are easy to play, hard to master, and then there's hard to play, easy to master. I guess I
yeah.
don't. Maybe that's a bad comparison, but regardless, there's a higher threshold or higher ceiling when it comes to Mexico than there is Brazil.
All right.
Even though it is a tougher like start.
So, speaking of interesting starts, how about we get to New Granada, a nation I know a little bit about because I've been playing.
Yeah,
So,
you've been playing them a lot. I played them as well. They are fun. You can really capitalize on taking over Venezuela very quickly.
can I be honest with you? Something that everyone should know. They suck in terms of construction because the mountains and the rainforest debuffs, right? It really does affect your ability to make stuff. But because it's very easy if you take Venezuela, right? Get allies, attack Venezuela, or well, you need Venezuela in any capacity, and maybe a piece of Ecuador. You can form Grand Colombia, right? That's a nice little return to form for it. You can also, once Central America breaks down, you can expand that way. If you want to, you can build up your navy, expand to Haiti. Again, I don't know why you would do that. I tried it and it was fine, but it's not like it was some secret resource stockpile.
No.
But like Greyshot151 said, there's a lot of different ways that you can expand for like resources that are good, and a lot of good nations around it that you can exploit.
Yep.
So the debuffs though are overall it's really the building. However, I was able, and I don't know about other nations, but I was able to actually turn a lot of the policies I want into effect pretty quickly with its government.
That's the benefit of most South American countries in that respect, is their politics you can develop pretty quickly.
Yeah. So and again, I just been playing a lot more New Granada. So I would say it's up there. I would probably say, right, it can be a rough start, because if you get pushed back by Venezuela because Brazil comes in, the US comes in, you're having a rough time. But so
Get that golden opportunity where you can take some nations relatively early, or capitalize on like a Central American collapse.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to think which would be better, New Granada or Bolivia, because I want to be honest. I think
New Granada, I would argue, is more fun because you can conquer, you can expand, you have a good resource base, especially with all the neighbors around you. There is a penalty, but probably like either high of B or low of A. I'd probably say low of A, because it's just fun.
It's fun.
I've tried at least every nation on this board. Did I die as Texas? Yes. Did I die multiple times as Paraguay? Yes. But in regards to like starting out, Bolivia is a pain to try to get to like work out. But the one nation that I actually enjoyed and I was mad when you took it was New Granada, because I think they are in a great spot.
All right, just to be a troll, I'll put it at high B. How about that?
Okay, we'll put it at high B. I think it's a low A, but I think the fun value of this in regards to being interesting and like developing is where it's really at.
Okay.
A-wise. I just realized I don't think we have Paraguay on here.
We do not have Paraguay. I was looking for that in the last like 30 seconds. I was like,
so general consensus: Paraguay is shit resources. Let me just tell you right now. Its population is meh. Also, as well, it's got like 600,000. But you want to know what it does have? The ability to backstab Brazil. In that one scenario, it's very fun to conquer a whole bunch of Brazil when the US or Great Britain or France don't intervene, which they usually do. You got like a 50-50 shot. But if you don't, or 117 doesn't cause you to crash the game multiple times, I would highly recommend playing Paraguay. Do I think they're actually good? No. Paraguay probably gets a list of C. You got like one chance, like one real path.
One good shot, that's it.
That one good shot and that's it.
I would disagree with that, because I would maybe put them actually in D. I think that they would be, because it's one shot, right? It's one chance, and there's a 50-50 shot. So I think it's a upper D, because again, it still has potential, kind of like Peru, but it's still one of those things, right, where you still have to then, after you win that war, still get bonuses and other things like that to then do other things.
I'd go bottom of C. I'd at least go bottom of C.
All right.
Bottom of C for Paraguay, in spirit.
Well, we do have another country here. How about Texas? Where would you put Texas?
Texas? Okay, I died as Texas. I'm not going to lie.
I also tried Texas. So, fun, when you versing Mexico, just like historical, essentially, you get pushed back. You capture their leader, was Santa Anna, right?
Yeah.
You capture Santa Anna, the war ends, and then it's like, okay, what do I do with this nation? Colonization. Let's take the Indian territory as quickly as possible, right? Yeah. Maybe you build up your economy very slowly to try to fight Mexico again, but you probably need an ally to do it. Yeah. At the very least, you can defend, right, at a certain point, if you're versing AI, but if it's a player, you're done.
You're just screwed, yeah.
And you have the high chance of being incorporated by the U.S. Like, you owe the U.S. very quickly, and if you backstab them or do anything, they'll just absorb you. There's nothing you can do. Especially with the manifest destiny of you taking territory that U.S. also wants, you're gonna be at war. You're gonna be in the influence of the U.S. Yeah, it's rough. It's really rough. I kind of want to put Texas on the D tier, honestly. It's fun.
You have put Texas in D tier. I think we're gonna get. God.
As someone who lives in Texas in this game at this time, at the height of Texas power, does not hold a candle to half the nations on this list. Easy, right? I'm being
On a
honest.
base resource wise, you're really kind of it's kind of fun to be Texas, but like your
The
resource base is also
population
crap.
is 56,000. Even if you get heavy migration, it's still not great.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue on that one. It just doesn't have the resources to interest me. Usually, I want a nation that like when I pick a nation, I like Sokoto or Siam, nations that have a solid foundation. Yes, they're in a rough spot, but you can build a really great economy from. Like
Yeah.
I love the building game of this. You can't do that in Texas. So I would the fact that you can
Because
the fact you can at least expand, I think that should make them at the bottom of C.
uh
Top of D.
I'm like iffy because the US is so there's so much pressure in the US incorporating you that
Yeah.
it's very hard to stay independent. Like incredibly difficult. So it is
So,
and again,
better than
it's
Peru in that
always
regard,
a
'cause-
challenge.
So better than Peru in that case. Top of D.
Since Peru gets annexed pretty quickly, yeah, I mean there's still a chance.
Basically, D is anything that's going to get absorbed, but at least you have a fighting chance, right? Or something of that nature.
Yeah, okay, I'll put Texas at the top of D. Is that fair?
Yeah. Next,
Oh.
Uruguay.
Go ahead, 151.
I have nothing to say about this nation other like no resources. You're just going to get absorbed. You're not even. I don't even think you're like the main part. I think if Piratini wins, they join Uruguay. I'm not really sure. I think. I remember maybe they like become independent or so, like the Piratini becomes independent. I did this as Paraguay. I beat Brazil as Paraguay. I can't remember if Uruguay got it or not. I don't think they did. But
Yeah.
otherwise, you're kind of just like at the mercy of Brazil. So
And you
F
don't
tier?
really. This might be our first F.
I think it's the
Yeah.
first time. You have no resources. Your population's crap. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing as Uruguay? I'm sorry. Listen, people from Uruguay. I'm not saying your country is bad. I'm just saying in regards to when I want to play historically, there's
Yeah.
not much excitement.
Okay, so next up would be Venezuela. No, sorry, USA. The US is S tier. Let's just get that out of the way.
Oh, yeah,
yes,
easily.
you have to
You
deal
have the
with the
most
Civil
inter-
War. You have to
Yeah,
deal with the Civil War potentially. You have to deal with fixing your politics and everything
Yep.
like that, and banning slavery. That can be a bit of a challenge, but fantastic economy, plenty of space, plenty of
Plenty of
people.
population. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Plenty of resources as well. You have every basic resource. I mean, you don't have stuff like, yeah, you don't have like the rarest stuff, but like in regards to agricultural. But for the most part, you're pretty much lock solid on like anything you want. And if you don't have anything you want, you can just go get it. You are the biggest big fish of the Americas. There's nothing that you can't have. So
Yeah.
like overall, if you want to be like a colonialist America, you totally can. It's not hard. And America's politics means that for the most part, there's not a lot early game that you're trying to fix, minus the slavery, which is its own mini game and a half. But you're not like trying to throw out autocracy or like landed voting or like trying to get landed voting. So honestly, you're in a great spot, great resources, great population. There's like no negatives, and you have an interesting part where you can expand all across the world, fight the Civil War. Yeah, easy S tier.
Yep. And again,
As in
you're a great
regards
power,
to
so-
interesting, it is the S tier of interesting for the
Yes.
Americas.
And of course, you can, because of a decent navy and because of the fact that you're a great power, you can influence yourself if you want to anywhere in the world.
Yep.
Venezuela, how's that interesting?
It's not. I mean, Venezuela isn't interesting because you have the more captivating New Granada right beside it. And New Granada's like you have resources that New Granada doesn't have, like sulfur, which is, pretty good. But like you're like the other way is to make Grand Colombia, you would need to conquer New Granada, and it's easier to go one way than it is the other.
You know
So
what? You know what Venezuela does have? Miranda. And Miranda has, at the very least, no debuffs in construction or anything like that. So it's actually, when you're playing as New Granada, that's the one thing you want to take from Venezuela.
what is Miranda? What's the province?
It's the one that's bordering New Granada along
Yeah,
the
that's
coast.
the one you take as New Granada. 'cause
Exactly.
it's the best province. Once you take that, there's no reason to play as Venezuela. Like, and on the flip side, it's harder to take territory from New Granada because it's not as, like.
Yeah. Maybe you can make alliances, but again, the border to New Granada is Peru, which is very tiny, and they already have their own issues with Bolivia. Central America, which breaks apart, or Ecuador. You could get a major power with you as well, but again, U.S. and U.K. and France could intervene against you, which could be an issue.
So, major point is there's more interesting nations in the area to choose. While you do have better resources, the caveat, and a better area, the caveat is why not just play another nation, conquer it, so you can, move on from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think they're in the class of C, whereas they're a nation that's good, but there's someone better in their sphere, and usually you want to play as the better nation in the sphere.
Do you think they're better than Chile? Because I think Chile's better.
Yeah, I think they're better than Chile. I think they're better than I think Chile's better. I think Cuba's more interesting. I would say but I'd say between Cuba and Hudson Bay.
Let's give it to Venezuela.
Yeah, I'll give it that.
So Cuba, it's Chile, Cuba, Venezuela, the Hudson Bay Company.
Yep.
All right. And again, if we added a couple nations, the Mosquito Kingdom, the Indian Territory, those would probably be in F tier, right?
Yeah, there's not really much you can do. You're just going to get conquered by a greater nation and die.
Or you're already a puppet, and it's hard to not be.
Yeah.
Or
on the flip side of Paraguay, probably a C as well, where you could do something interesting
where you can shoot off and try, but most likely fail.
Yeah, you're just gonna die. So, what are you gonna do? But yeah, otherwise, that is our Victoria list for the Americas. It'll probably take us a little bit while for the rest of the nations. I'm not gonna lie, mainly because we've been focusing on the Americas for this, I've been trying to pick a different nation every time we play multiplayer for the Americas. And while we have been picking around the world, I think Europe is our next hardest one, where we all have to pick the European nations we haven't chosen already.
Well, 151, just saying. I'm just pointing this out. Luckily, we have plenty of free time over the next 2 weeks. You're not going anywhere, right? So we got plenty of time to play the other nations.
Yeah, sure, let's go with that. But yeah, we'll probably do this. We'll probably then focus on goods and resources, then come back to Europe once we have a bit more experience with the larger and smaller powers. Because while Italy, Sweden, France, Spain, there's nations that we've tried. There's plenty of, or Russia. There's other nations like Russia that we usually eating. Then we do playing. So.
No, very fair. So. Again, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. I'll add in these other nations we forgot now, or if I haven't done so already, so you guys can see that. But hey, I think we made a good list. Next time we'll probably do Europe, I think. Maybe we'll just go base Europe and...
Yeah, we'll have to do base Europe. I literally looked at the rest, and it's going to be Europe, Africa, and then Asia. And Asia's going to be a monster and a half.
All right. Well, enjoy that when it comes out. This has been Greyshot117.
And Greyshot151.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Until then, later.
Hello everyone, this is Greyshot117, and before y'all go, let me give a special shout out to Patreon supporters Joey G240, Milam, BigChuche, Aphyria, Ace, PyroShark, Tony B95, Epic Pleb. Thank you all for your incredible support and helping me grow my channel and support my channel and everything I do. Thank you, and to the rest of you, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.